name's Gail Minger, and I'm from Seneca, South Carolina. I was surprised when I found out that I was going to have twins. I was a little bit older, and my first birth, and had a little boy and a little girl. Michael was born with a few differences. He was a delightful child, very unassuming, and just the biggest heart. The morning of September 18th, we got a phone call about a few minutes after 6 in the morning. I answered it, and then the person on the other end was a gentleman, and he said, is Mr. Minger there? So I handed him the phone thinking, okay. And so I'm listening, and I'm hearing him say, listen, and then he said, what do you mean there was another fire? And he said, he kind of took the phone down from his mouth and looked at me, and he said, Michael's dead. And I said, what do you mean Michael's dead? And he said, Michael was killed in a fire. And I just remember kind of rocking a bit and then started wailing. And it's like you don't even know what to do. It's not real, nothing's real. Do I go get dressed? Do I take a shower? You don't think about anything normal. So it's just my whole brain was, how do I get to my child? But that was it. That was the cold reality and the cold words that Michael was dead. It was the second fire in his dorm in 5 days. Someone had poured a gallon of gasoline in the hallway for the second fire and ignited it around 2:38 a.m. And Michael tried to get out. There was all evidence he had put towels under his door, but because of the code violations and improper building issues that they had been dealing with and never corrected, smoke was coming under Michael's door and over top from a ceiling that should have been all the way up to the top of the roof, and it was not. There was a gap there, so fire was pouring in over that as well. So he was really in a death trap. Michael was only 3 feet from safety, but that door had closed. They were supposed to have panic bars on the door. They did not do what the fire marshal's office had told them. He was in his room, but then left because it was getting dire in there, very, very hot, temperatures up close, 1,000 degrees. So he left the room, and they found him. His upper torso was in his room, and his legs were in the hallway because he had tried to escape but couldn't push on that door. And with all the smoke and heat, he was already being compromised. To go the way he normally would exit was now closed off. It was like a wall there. They did not have fire sprinklers. The state had given them the money to have them, but the university spent the money on beautification of the campus. They had all the same issues they had 20 years before. They had not fixed anything. And Michael's smoke alarm was actually sitting out on the floor in the hallway. It wasn't even attached in his room. I'm not sure why they pulled it off the wall, if it was not working at the time and they didn't want us to know that. Everything had to go wrong for Michael to have died in this fire. Everything was wrong. I really wanted to know what was his last hours like. What was he doing prior to this devastating fire? He wanted to be in sports broadcasting, and he was so much wanting to be part of the media at the university. He got to go in the press box. He had just said that was just one of the things he wanted to do so much. He had the lanyard, he was in the press box, he was just so excited. And he had that on his desk back in his dorm room. And that I picked that up. He had gotten to actually be part of one of the college games. And I'm so thankful he had that opportunity before he lost his life. I just wanted to make a change. So I went to Kentucky's government. I thought I was just going to be there a week or so and draw up this piece of legislation about getting sprinklers in dormitories and changing the other things that were wrong. I ended up being there the entire legislative session, over 3 months. The first time they just put the bill and it was into Appropriations Committee, and that's where bills die. I went home I lived in Florida at that time, and I just couldn't believe this was the end after all we'd been through and the work we'd tried to accomplish. And so I got a phone call from one of the senators, state senators, and he said, "Would you please tell me what happened here again?" And I thought, what do you mean tell you again? Like you didn't hear? You didn't understand? I said, well, it was my child. He said, well, can you come back to Kentucky? I will get the bill out of appropriations. They put it on the floor. It passed unanimously through the Senate and the House and became law known as the Minger Act. It wasn't really my idea. I didn't want to take this on. I didn't want my life to be involved with driving up and down the road and fighting with legislators and fighting with university people and attorneys and all. It's like, what an ugly life. And reminding me all the time about what I lost. But Michael would have looked at me and said, Mom, you taught us to be responsible. And if we saw something that wasn't right, do something about it. So how could I not do what I taught my children that they should do in life? And that was the catalyst that made me move forward. There was never anyone held accountable for not doing what they were supposed to do regarding anything that had to do with fire safety, like to put fire sprinklers in as they'd been told to do. I think educating people and trying to change the culture, educating students. I talked to a lot of RAs all around the state and then around the nation. I would be invited to speak and tell Michael's story. And I did that to give children that age an understanding that they have a voice and they have the power to help affect change. And it would take them to do it. I couldn't save Michael, but my goal was to help save those children. They might not be my children, but they were someone's child. And that just kind of kept me going for a while to continue the message in education and prevention. And a group of us gathered. Bonnie Woodruff lost her son in a fraternity fire, and Donna lost her son. And so there were 5 of us originally, and I went to Albuquerque and thought, okay, we're the voices for those that have no voice. And I thought it was a good group to be a part of. Their mission was a bit more focused on, or was focused on fire sprinklers and getting that level of safety in buildings, in dorms, in homes, nursing homes, places that it just needed to be. All of our stories are different, but yet we all have that ache of something that was taken away from us that was so precious. And most of all of it never had to happen. If sprinklers would have been in place, Michael would be alive today. How can we get the message out? Why isn't it being heard? What can we do? I mean, the horrific stories, it's really heartbreaking. It's random. We can't save everyone, but we can save a lot more people. So there's so much that could be done. And we've worked hard at it. We've made some inroads, but there's still work to be done. It's incredible that it has this much resistance. But I think us as a society don't help because we don't get behind it to the full extent that we should, just like kids wanted Wi-Fi. You want Wi-Fi. When you go to a hotel today, if it doesn't have Wi-Fi, you don't want to be there. There's things that we want in our society We want to have hot water. We want to have things that are for our safety. We want to have lighting when you're going down the hall so you can see where you're going. But people, for some reason, just have the wrong idea about fire sprinklers. So they say, well, what if there isn't a fire? I've spent this money. Well, why do you have car insurance, home insurance? No, you do it as a precaution. And I think people just don't understand the reality of fire, how often it occurs, and the devastation, and the cost, human and financial. We're talking human survival, life. Again, it's just unbelievable that we have not moved forward as much as I believe we should have. Unfortunately, I think some people in the industry that is pushing against changing the culture or having sprinklers in all buildings, if a catastrophic situation happened within their family or friends, I think it would be moved along a lot quicker. I'm not wishing that on anyone, but it's unfortunate that until it happens to you, often people think it's not real or they can't be bothered. I don't want to believe that humans can't be bothered. I think they just bury it until they would have to deal with it themselves or have to bury their own. I think for them to start in their own families, to, sit their kids down at the dinner table, or their kids going off to college, or their young people that are out of college and moving into a home or apartment or whatever, and to make them understand the significance of fire, that it does happen and it can happen, to start there, and then it trickles down to others. If someone sees you doing something that is a safety, like regiment, a friend or something, and you say, oh, I do this because. And so I think changing the culture is going to have to come from within. We certainly need the help with some legislation and all, but I think if we speak to one another, how did we ever start wearing seatbelts all the time? How did all these things that we do differently, what was the catalyst that made us do those things? And I think it's kind of a homegrown thing. You start talking with your own family, your extended family, and it will stick with some will ignore it. It matters if some people start talking about it. You've already saved so many people. And if we can get it part of a conversation amongst us, and it expands, and then we start requiring it, just like you require Wi-Fi in your hotel room. You want it because it's convenient. You want it because you can do your work. Just there's other things we require. And the industries and all listen to us and make it happen. So it's us, all of us, that are going to need to speak up, tell them what we want and need to feel safe, be fire safe, because it's something that is preventable and we need to do it for one another. I won't stop until the day I take my last breath. I can't imagine not doing something, not to maybe the level I did in the past, but whatever I can to help make a difference. And not because I'm someone special. It's because Michael was someone special, and he deserves nothing less.